Great. Thanks to all of you. Let me talk about action and how you can train and make some suggestions, but I'm still waiting for your plan by the end of the day. Very practical. It doesn't have to have too much preamble about why it's important. It has to be an action-oriented plan. The Sustainable Development Goals, because they combine a very wide range of issues: education, health, poverty, agriculture, urbanization, infrastructure, jobs, biodiversity. These are not easy. I've spent, I'd say, pretty much nonstop 45 years studying these issues now, and feel that it's endless. Every opening you have, there's more. So first you have to study. Now, I wrote a good textbook on this, which I really recommend. That's not because I recommend my textbook. I wrote it because there wasn't a textbook. So if you find another textbook you like, fine. But for the moment, the Age of Sustainable Development is meant, chapter by chapter, to help you understand what is the education issue, what is the health issue, what is the climate issue, what is the infrastructure issue. It was written in a very operational way. It's really meant so in a reading you can go topic by topic. There's an online course on the book, free, available, pleasant, I think, from what I've heard from a lot of people. Please, you must study these things. This is not self-evident. And what I'm doing in the textbook and in the video is channeling expertise, because what I learned a long time ago as a generalist is that the key is to be able to channel expertise, because each of these subjects has its own epistemic community. That means a community of high knowledge. And so if you want to understand malaria control, you better talk to the malariologists. If you want to understand AIDS, you better talk to the AIDS doctors. If you want to understand sustainable agriculture, you better talk to the agronomists. Not all of you can do that so easily. It's been my job for 20 years, precisely that. Empowered by the United Nations and Columbia University, organize specialist communities, listen to them, channel them, make proposals based on their knowledge. So I'm trying to give you a shortcut to get started. But there's ultimately nothing but lots of work ahead, because this is lifelong education, period, for anything. Anything you do is lifelong education. But there are no shortcuts, but we've given you a lot of tools to get started. And you may write to me anytime at sax@columbia.edu, say, I want more, or I don't understand why you said that, or I don't agree with this, and you'll hear back from me. Now, a second resource is your local universities. Please. Most are not organized around sustainable development right now, but some are. Those that are not should be. The reason they're not is that this is cross-faculty, this is cross-disciplinary. It takes a university effort to reorganize itself so that the agronomists are speaking to the public health specialists, are speaking to the engineers, are speaking to the economists. That's not how our universities are organized in general. But because of the challenges, they're reorganizing to facilitate these cross-disciplinary messages. Check out, if you're at a university, make sure you understand where the best locus of leadership is. Maybe there is a center for sustainability. Maybe there is an institute or someplace. If there's not, choose any of your advisors and go make an effort to recommend this kind of action. But they can be mentors to you. The knowledge is really important. I couldn't take a step forward on any of these topics without having credible, reliable experts that I can turn to, and I do every single day. I call them, I say, what does this mean in the newspaper? Why is it like this? Every day I'm asking my colleagues questions, because these are technical subjects that I cannot assess despite 45 years of working on them, unless I'm asking somebody who really knows. You don't have that network yet, but you probably have advisors and you have SDSN to help you. That's the purpose. The fundamental purpose of SDSN is knowledge-led development, if I could put it in one sentence. Because without that, we can have all the goodwill in the world, but we're not going to solve the problems. The goodwill should lead us to the knowledge that we need to solve the problems. Okay, so that's the first point, is you must learn. You must know where to turn. You must get some help. You should use SDSN as a resource. That's why it exists. It exists as a network. And every day I say to my colleagues in the network, how do we strengthen as a network? Not as 20 people writing articles in New York or Paris or someplace, but as a network, because that's the point of this thing. That's the only point of it. This is to empower you, but it cannot work unless you're taking it on. You don't have to be experts in everything, but you should appreciate that there is expertise in everything. Don't speak about things you don't know about, except to try to learn. The world doesn't need lots of people faking it. We could have a world of Donald Trumps, all yelling at each other. Okay? So please, this is really important. Second is organization. I want all of you to have two roles. You're leading your own organizations, but I want you to lead an SDG effort in your communities in some way. That can be an SDSN youth chapter. It can be an SDG chapter for your cities. It can be based at the university if you are. But that goes beyond your own organization. That's a responsibility for building something that is general. I'm a creature of universities. I stepped into a university in 1972. I've never stepped out of a university. So 45 years I've been a student. God forbid I should get a job. But I like universities. They have people of lots of different skills. They have intergenerational. We're a bit separated from all of the commercial pressures, not entirely, but a bit. So I really like universities as places to do this work. If that's convenient for you, I strongly recommend it. Strongly recommend it. If you're still affiliated but a little bit outside, if you're at the hospital but your university is nearby, go partner with them, because this is what universities should do around the world. So it's good for them, and it's a good base of operation. What does organization mean? It means, first, you're taking on the goals as a whole. Second, you're taking them on in action-oriented ways. That can start, by the way, with the campus being more sustainable. That's useful. You learn, should we have solar panels here? Should we have, what should we do with water treatment? What should we do with our waste management? That, by the way, is good for the community, good for students, good for student projects, good for the university self-discipline, and also educational, because there's nothing like solving problems to learn about problem solving. You cannot learn about problem solving in theory. You have to learn about it in practice. So the campus is one place. Second, the issues of if you happen to be lucky to be at a university that has an endowment, that's not so many, but some of them do, then working on the responsible management of the endowment is absolutely appropriate. Divestment issues, for example, very important. It combines the moral, the financial, and the analytical all together, so it's a very good thing to do. Third, cities. Work on cities. You're not at a stage in your career when you can run your countries, when you can advise the world, but you can absolutely...
Yeah, they are, Jeff.
No, they're not.
Yeah, they are.
No, they're not. They need experience, and you need practical experience. Get your cities on the SDGs. Get your communities on the SDGs. Solve local problems where you have the authority because you're the relative experts on that. Gain experience. Prove your success. Go to a province, go to a state. It's important, step by step, because all of this takes a lot of learning and a lot of experience and a lot of hard knocks and some failures to actually learn how this works. And the cities are wonderful places. This is where most of the world lives now. And cities are complicated. They're really organic organisms, as we know. They are full societies. They have problems of energy, of water, of transport, of jobs, of inequality, of biodiversity, of natural hazards, of climate change, of unfairness, of violence. They have all 17 Sustainable Development Goals within them. So what better way? I always tell my students, walk outside, ask where the electric poles come from, ask how the sewage is treated. You're living in an economy. Don't look at the stupid textbook alone. You're in the middle of one. So this is your city that can really help you to see, what is this about? Not everything can be solved at the city level because this is the subsidiarity idea. Certain problems can be solved at the city level, other problems at a national level, still other problems at the global level. But start at the cities as practical problem solvers. You'll earn your ticket to solve other problems. The more you solve, the more you've earned your way to solve further problems. That is just the nature of problem solving also. If you're lucky that you're invited in to solve something that is first time and thanks God it works, okay, that's good for you. If you do something and it's a disaster because you had no proper place to be there, it's not so good. So really be ready, trained, prepared as best you can. You'll gain experience constantly, over and over. Everything in life builds. And so you'll be able to use this. So I would really emphasize the local areas. Your mayors have never heard of the Sustainable Development Goals unless they're really unusual. But most of them have not. But if you show them, they say, that's what I do every day. Say, yes, but by joining forces with other urban networks, with SDSN, with the United Nations, with SDG advocates, we can help this city to solve problems. And do you know, Madam Mayor, do you know, Mr. Mayor, we could put in solar panels, we could do this, or we could do that. Finally, let me say one word about Niger, okay? Because it's a good case. Niger is perhaps the poorest place in the whole planet, probably the most desperate or certainly within the poorest 5 places on the planet. Okay. Why? There are a lot of intrinsic reasons why. One is it's landlocked. 2 is it's hyper-arid. Already those 2 account for a lot. Third, for a lot of reasons of extreme poverty, extreme isolation, colonial history, neglect, it has had decades of impoverishment and disempowerment of women, of course, and child marriage, and a fertility rate of 7, just about the highest in the world. And that has meant that the population has increased 10 times from 1950 till now, from about 2.5 million to about 25 million by 2020. 10 times in the middle of a desert, isolated, no ports, no infrastructure, no electricity. So this is a desperate situation, absolutely desperate. The whole Sahel is like that. There's no use in yelling at the government alone, because the average income is $375 per person. If you collect 20% of that in taxes, and you'd be lucky to do it, that's $75 per person per year. For what? For electrification, water, roads, communications, healthcare, education. $75. So either the world helps Niger or disaster continues. That's a major reality. And that's why we have to actually have a hard-headed understanding. It's one of the toughest places in the world, by far. And yelling will not solve it. You need electrification. Thank God for photovoltaics, because for the first time, Niger could actually have electricity. Thank God for telecommunications, because thanks God for the first time, a landlocked place 1,000 miles from a port could actually be connected to the world and to markets. 2 huge advantages. But one needs a strategy. I can tell you, this is, my work for 40 years, that place is tough. So we need a strategy. And that's what the role of the SDGs there is to say, these are everybody's goals, but Niger can't possibly meet them on their own. So that's why I spent the day in Brussels, exactly on that point. That's why we're going to mobilize philanthropy, but what we need from Niger is from the government and society, because there's a civil society, is we need to get these done, and with help, we will take leadership and ownership to do that, but we know it cannot be done on its own. And so that's the partnership that needs to be forged. And Niger is a case to take, because if you talk about leaving no one behind, let's start with 25 million people in Niger, who are the most left behind people on the planet right now. Very clear. And so it's a very good question, and it's exactly why hard-headed engineering for photovoltaics, engineering for connectivity, primary health systems based on community healthcare outreach, education systems based on some connected classrooms, for example, because there are not teachers that can teach all the kids. The median age in Niger is 15 years old. You have more than half the country in school age. So this requires really hard-headed analysis, good hearts, and a lot of help. That's why it's a wonderful case. We should put Niger high on the list for SDG success. So all of this is to say, please get organized. We'll give you intellectual backing, analytical backing, quantitative backing, connections with experts. That's my job. But you're on the ground. Without this being led everywhere, it's impossible. No one else is going to save Niger but people of Niger. This is for sure. But they can't do it by themselves. So that's the notion of a network, and that's the notion of local leadership. You're all of you prepared to be local leaders right now. I'm not convinced you're prepared to be national leaders or world leaders just yet. But you're all prepared to be local leaders right now. And if you work very hard at it, you'll be very successful. And you'll be in a unique position to continue to spread the word. Gain some successes under your belt, really important. And keep building, keep expanding, and this will work. Thanks.
Thank you, Professor. Monsignor?
I want to say that we are here in the Academy not only because our some sort of hospice that not annul any relation with the Academy. The Academy for many years worked in this subject in parallel to the OECD, and in a very important, for example, the question of climate change was an invention of the Academy, of our team, of the Academy, Crutzen, Molina. So, and also the question of the grave problem that the Pope want to study, the question of the new form of slaves in the form of forced labor, prostitution, and organ trafficking is also one of the subjects that the Academy study in relation with the other things. So please read also the things that have the Academy and produce the Academy that are in our website, because I think that we need to have a more clear synthesis or hierarchy of the objectives of the development. Because, for example, I don't find in the objectives the word fraternity or the word solidarity, and these are very important because they are the motor. And this is the subject of our meeting. We need to put this. In the contrary, we don't have right to realize these new objectives. So my intervention is to say, please look also the work of the Academy, and that is in parallel to the work of the United Nations. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ala?
I'm just going to comment on, I think, two things. The first is, with all due respect, Professor Sachs, I disagree fundamentally on national and global leadership. I think that many of you arguably know more than your elected officials about the SDGs. Many of you arguably know more about Agenda 2030 and about sustainability. And I think a huge way to actually achieve the SDGs is to run for office. Run for local office, run for national office. I don't care, but run for office. Get some actual political power, because once you're in those rooms, you can call people up like Professor Sachs and say, who are the experts on this? Because I actually have some legitimate authority, I have resources, and I have capability. But continuing, I think, to tell this generation that we're not yet prepared for national and global leadership allows for a political apparatus which I think is just not fit for purpose to remain. And so I fundamentally think that y'all should just, if you think you have the capacity and the capability, and you have the opportunity, and you can get the resources and the backing, run for office. You're more prepared than most of the guys who've been sitting in the chairs for 20 and 30 years. The second thing I will mention is incentive. I think, you know, it's all good and well for us to talk quite a bit about the challenges and about what we want to do, and the reality is there's got to be some sort of incentive in terms of engagement, especially long-term engagement for most of us. And I think we haven't had an honest conversation about what the practical things we need to get organized and to get connected and to work on these issues for the long term are. So I think my interest really, and one of the main reasons I came here was to hear, okay, so what are we not getting? A lot of you have brought up some very important parts. Some is actual access, mentorship, and ability. Others have said resources are very important. Some have said training is very important. What can we do to actually solve those practical issues so we can strategize legitimately? So we can make strategies that you can actually get funding for and support for and connections for. What is it we can practically do? I think it's great for all of us to have ideas. I think that's awesome. But we need some plans, and we need some legitimate strategy, and we need to talk about how we're going to fund it, who's going to be accountable for it. Do we need to create some sort of network for access for certain countries, et cetera? But those would be my two things. Let's start thinking, I think, a bit more strategically. And the second is run for office.